Our top story this hour. ASEAN leaders are joining forces with China, Japan and South Korea to fight COVID-19. The leaders have come together in a joint video link-up hosted by Vietnam. China has also promised to send 100 million masks and other urgently needed supplies to the region. And more on the ASEAN summit from Associate Professor Simon Tay. He's chairman of the Singapore Institute of International Affairs. Thanks for joining us this evening. Firstly, ASEAN ministers are proposing a COVID-19 ASEAN Response Fund. What does that aim to do?
Well, I think that there are very diversities of funding from different countries. And I think funding the overall project plus the cross-border issues, I think these are some good uses for fund. It also shows solidarity. You know, ASEAN is supposed to be a community working together. Funding it is a good sign.
So, Prof, how effective will it be for future crises going forth then?
I think we must be very realistic, Glenda. The primary mechanism will still be the countries. It depends on which country can do what for its own citizens. But at the second level, I think ASEAN can contribute. There are many cross-border movements of people, of goods and services. Supply chains are critical, especially for the medical equipment, food and other essentials. And I think it's great news that ASEAN is coming together and trying to address these issues.
Now, we see a strain on healthcare systems and supply chains, as you mentioned, globally. As the number of COVID-19 cases around the world continues to rise, what are some of the most pressing issues then that ASEAN will have to address?
There is a global shortage of medical equipment, test kits and ventilators. Even Europe and America are fighting over them. I think this will be a big challenge for the smaller countries of ASEAN. We need to work with partners. It's a very good sign that not just ASEAN members, but China, Japan, and South Korea have been invited and took part in this summit. It's them who have the manufacturing capabilities. Of course, ASEAN must gear up and share equipment, but bringing these larger Northeast Asian giants in will be a very important factor going forward, given the experience with the disease and the manufacturing abilities.
Well, this pandemic has also affected the economies quite badly. So what can ASEAN governments collectively do to make sure that their economies can survive this outbreak?
That's a very good question, Glenda. I think that one of the key parts to remember is that the ASEAN plus these Northeast Asian three was created in a response to the Asian financial crisis back, when most of you were kids. And in that time, it played a very important role and created a lot of the financial instruments for stability and the monitoring system. And I think this in particular, the economic and financial flows that go across the region, will be a great contribution for ASEAN to work together with large countries. And I think at some point, we must also bring in Australia, New Zealand and other friends in the region.
So would you say it's also critical then for ASEAN to work together closely, particularly now?
I think it's a bit overdue, actually. ASEAN countries have really been behind the curve in recognizing the problem. The numbers in Singapore are quite high, but in other countries the numbers are artificially low because the testing has not been thorough enough. And the numbers were going to go up. In Indonesia, we expect the numbers to keep climbing until perhaps May, even into June. And this will be problematic and cause alarm. But the good news is that by ASEAN coming together, it shows that all the countries are now trying to get together, find ways to work together, and also bring in these other partners. It's a good sign what happened today.
Prof, you mentioned there about the testing. So what do you think are specific steps that ASEAN will need to take in order to help in the global fight against COVID-19?
Well, it will move fronts, you see. It started off in China and Asia, then moved to the West. And I think the next wave, the danger is that it will move to developing countries, of which many of the countries, our ASEAN neighbors, are developing countries. In these countries, the resources of hospital care, testing are just too thin. The populations are too large and dispersed, unlike small Singapore. And we see this now, particularly with the Water Festival in Thailand, in Myanmar. Many people are traditionally returning home. Though they've stopped the partying, this movement within the country can also cause problems. So really, this is where ASEAN must really try to help each other, exchange notes, figure out how to trace. Singapore, with its strengths of size and also technology, can help. This trace together Bluetooth software we've developed I think can be help to other countries on a very practical level.
All right, thank you very much for speaking to us and sharing your perspective tonight. We've been speaking with Associate Professor Simon Tay, Chairman of the Singapore Institute of International Affairs.